Welcome everybody to the Sparx Global webinar series. My name's Scott Hebbard. I'm the Communications Manager here at Sparx Systems, and I'm joined by Nizam Mohammed, who is our resident Sparx Systems Prolaborate expert, who's going to step through three architecture visualizations to wow your stakeholders. So I'd like to welcome everybody today. It's great to see you all, and it's great to see so many people online today. So the agenda, I'm going to briefly talk about how to submit questions, and at the end we'll have a Q&A session, and Nizam is going to step through and look at some of the great visualizations within Prolaborate and how you can do fantastic reporting and charts. So looking forward to that. Please note that audio is muted for all participants, but you'll be able to type your questions to the host. And if we can't answer all the questions live, we'll follow up offline after the event. Had a few people ask about will this be recorded, and yes, it'll be available on sparxsystems.com and on the Sparx Systems YouTube site. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nizam, who's going to do our presentation. So welcome, Nizam, and nice to have you here.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. In this webinar, we'll be walking through some of the visualizations in Prolaborate in a little detail. So as a heads up, I need to let you know that this is more a hands-on sort of a session where we are going to walk through the steps in designing one of these. There are other webinars where we have spoken about what are the various visualizations available. So the bottom line here is to have the EA repository in place. So I'm looking at the EA repository where we have the business application, information, and technology layers fairly well defined. And I'm going to look at the COTS applications in my architecture repository and take a closer look at one of the applications in it. As you could see, as a common practice, we have a range of attributes against each of these artifacts to kind of add more details to it. For this application, I've got a set of attributes, and these applications are also connected to the rest of the model. You could see business processes, the technology stack, the capabilities, the projects, and various other things connected to these applications. So let's just look at one of these and see where it's coming from. And as you can see, I've got the data objects coming from the information layer, and it's connected to the application. Similarly, if I look at what's management reporting, you'll see that it's coming from the capability. So I've got a mapping done to the L2 or L1 capability, L2 capability, where I've got the a traceability between what are the capabilities that are driven by this application. So based on your meta model, there will be several things connected and there will be several attributes captured. But in this session, what we are going to see is how such a comprehensive set of details could be simplified and presented to the people who are who don't have the time to go through the details in the model, but want to get the insights out of it. So some of these visualizations, such as a roadmap or a bubble chart or a simple pie chart, for example, are the ones that could get better buy-in from the users who are non-tech but would like to use this this kind of a detail. So if I switch to another dashboard, and Prolaborate would allow you to define multiple dashboards catering to different stakeholders. So I'm just switching to a different dashboard where we've got three visualizations, which we have identified to be the most popular ones amongst stakeholders: the bubble chart, the roadmap, and the landscape diagrams. As you guys know, the landscape diagrams is the one where we could go through multiple levels of data and present them in a hierarchical manner so that they are grouped accordingly to let the users just hover over one and understand what's specific to a particular criteria. So these are the three different types of visualizations that we'll be seeing in detail in this session. So to start, we go to design a new dashboard. And as you can see, there are several dashboards here, and I'm going to add a new one. and add a new widget to this dashboard. And there are a range of widgets that you could choose from. I'm going to start with a EA chart, which is where we will be able to take the enterprise architect model data and present it in one of these charts, one of these available charts. And these are useful in different intensive purposes. But let's start with the bubble chart, which is one of the most common visualization to analyze how, for example, an application stacks against the strategic importance and its capex or something like that. So the bottom line here is this designer has been specifically designed to let the EA modelers and the architects to create these visualizations. So the expectation is that they understand a little bit about what's done in the model. So if I go back to the model, just to show you what we are working on, there's an application inventory where I've got a set of applications. And for each of these applications, I've got a fair amount of details, also called as tagged values in EA captured. So I've got a COTS application package in which I've got a list of applications, and each of those applications has a business unit, cost, go live date, sunset date, health indicators, IT units, and various other attributes that are specific to that application. So for this chart, a bubble chart, all we need is a x-axis and a y-axis and a z, which is the size of the bubble. And I'm going to use the cost and the strategic importance parameters to define that. So as a first step, I'm choosing the package where that particular set of applications are captured, which is the COTS application in this case. And the moment I do that, Prolaborate will go and find out all the tag values and types that are available in that particular package. So I'm choosing application component, which is what I've used to model my applications. I could then narrow down my visualization by filtering it to a specific criteria. It could be based on the name, or it could be based on a tag value. For example, if I want to look at only the production applications, I'll be able to set a filter to say, just show me the production applications in this particular bubble chart. But let me look at it in a later discussion, like in the third chart that we're going to look at today. But what I'm going to start with is to define my x-axis. And to do that, I'm saying it's going to be a tag value. And the moment I say that, Prolaborate will go and fetch all the tag values that are applied to that particular artifact. And I'm choosing cost. Similarly, for the y-axis, I'm again saying I want it to be a tag value. And the moment I say that, it goes, fetches all the applicable tag values. And then I'm choosing, in this case, the strategic importance. So I've defined my x-axis and y-axis. And the z-axis could be just a count, where it'll say there are 2 applications which against this x and y, or alternatively, I could even choose another attribute to denote the size. So in this case, I'm going to say I'll just use cost as an indicator of how much we are investing on an application. So the size of the bubble is also going to be determined by cost. So I'm choosing cost, but it could be operating on 3 completely different variables as well. So once I've set the basic attributes configuration, x-axis and y-axis, based on the model definition. Again, this definition expects the user to have a very good understanding of what's been modeled, but he or she need not write a single line of query to do this. It's all intuitive, and it's more like the selection driven. So as a next step, it kind of shows you how the chart will look like as a result, and I can adjust settings. For example, I'm turning off the legend, and then looking at the preview, it shows, hey, this is how your final visualization will look. And then you could choose a different color palette as well. I can also set what's the size of the bubble. So I'm saying the minimum size is 15 and the maximum size is 35. So we have got some real control to, for you to determine how your final presentation should look like. Then I also have an option to set the x-axis label, the y-axis label, and the z-axis label. So I know I'm going a little technical in this, but that's the purpose of this webinar, to give you a clear insight on how to define each of these. I can even enable quadrants if you want to do something like an invest, divest, maintain sort of visualization, or just a bubble with an x-axis and y-axis. So again, reiterating, the bottom line or the idea behind this designer is to let the modelers and architects use the EA data to create a visualization, but instead of them working on writing a query or a script to do so, it's all graphical and driven by models. So you don't even have to remember the tagged values, or as long as you know what are the parameters you're working on, that's more than sufficient.
So Nizam, if I could just stop you there and ask a couple of questions. So there's a question from Gustavo that says, so Prolaborate will replace graph artifacts somehow. Perhaps because although it might be clear to me, it might not be clear to the audience. Where does Prolaborate start and where does Enterprise Architect start? So.
Okay, so it's an interesting question. Prolaborate is all about visualization. So as you could see, I've been going back to the EA model again and again to say that it's all driven by the EA model information. But if you are asking about the charts that are used in EA versus the visualizations that we are using in Prolaborate, I would say the Prolaborate visualizations are more for the non-EA and the non-tech community to whom we want to cater to. So as a consultant, I've seen many scenarios where we create all the highly defined and populated models, but we have always had a challenge to get that information across to the wider team. Like the buy-in has always been a challenge. Prolaborate's visualizations are for the people who don't have the time or interest to install EA, go through the learning curve to be able to use it. This is web-based, so you could just share them a link to the dashboard, and that visualization that we are creating for a user or a user group is specific to them. So we can create really curated dashboards for that particular stakeholder. So when your need is to go out of the EA community to the rest of the audience, that's where Prolaborate comes in.
Thanks, Nizam. And I think it's really important to see that all of the COTS information and all of the rich, detailed enterprise architecture information is stored in the enterprise architect model, and you're being able to leverage that through bubble charts. And it was really great to see how easy it was to just select a few attributes, a few tagged values, and in probably less than 5 minutes, we were able to create a really rich, detailed bubble chart. So thanks for that. We'll continue on, and perhaps after the next section, I might stop again and ask a few more questions.
Sure. So just continuing on this. So once we do all those steps, we have added a widget, and Prolaborate will let you further fine-tune the look and feel of it. So you could define the header and the title and things like that. It's tailored towards making appealing visualization so that the people who are so used to the Visios and PowerPoints wouldn't feel intimidated to look at these details. As you could see, it's an extraordinary way to bridge the gap between the technical details that we have in the model and the people who are less inclined for technical details. And once we design this dashboard, Prolaborate will even let you choose which group or which audience, like user, you would like this dashboard to be made available to. So that's where Prolaborate is special, where you could have a specific visualization for a specific user group. So this is the resultant chart, and as you could see, the size is depending on the total cost that we are spending, and the bubbles represent an application, and the name of the application is shown in the bubble. So everything is customizable, configurable here, and we haven't written a single line of code or script. So moving on, we'll be looking at the second most popular visualization when it comes to architectural representation, which are the roadmaps. As you could see, as you know, roadmaps are the ways to take and give a visualization of how things are at the moment and what is the expectation in the future, what are the key milestones and things like that. So again, going back to editing the dashboard that I created previously. So I'll be going a little more detail in how to configure charts after defining as well in this particular step. So I'm choosing EA chart and I'm choosing roadmap as the one that I want to define. And in order to do anything here, I need to have an understanding of what's in my model. Though I know I don't have to write a query, I need to know what am I going to work on. And in this time, I'm going to choose the projects. So the work packages, in other words, I've captured my projects as work packages and they are connected to applications. So I'm looking at the work package details in Prolaborate. So again, Prolaborate's aim is to present a simpler visualization or view to the users. So if I want to understand the project, even a non-tech user could see that in Prolaborate, and I'm showing him or her a very custom defined form. Instead of going and looking at the complete details from the architectural repository behind, we could just have a custom form shown in Prolaborate. So I'm looking at it and then I'm saying, okay, I want to choose work packages here. And then I can, as you know, optionally set a filter to narrow down the items being shown, or I'll go into the roadmap definition straight away where I'm going to say my start date is a tag value and that's project start date. And my end date is another tag value and I'm going to use project end date. So all these are tag values. And what you see here is the start date and end date in the model are shown here as a quick reference to let you determine what's your time format. There's plethora of options, like there's a range of time formats chosen or used in different regions. It'll tell you what's in the model so that you could say this is the date format that I'm expecting. So again, going back to Prolaborate itself to understand that project or the details of the project in the and then coming back to the designer here to say what I would like to group my roadmaps based on. So a grouping roadmap is like, if you don't group them, it will just be like a line of bars. I'm grouping them based on the core portfolio. So the projects have been classified based on core portfolio, and I'm choosing that as the tag value here. And as I go to the next step, we'll have a range of options again to define the look and feel of the roadmap, which includes the height and the space between each of these bars, the color, the background color, the font, whether you want to show the legends, whether you want to show the group legends, and so on. So I'm just choosing a background color, which I will eventually change in the next step. But just to show you what what these definitions, how these definitions would reflect in the final chart, I'm going to do another step to refine the look and feel. But I'm just setting the basic configurations here. I can even say a custom start date and end date. So the start date and end date are chosen by Prolaborate based on the list of values that are in this particular selection, but you can also customize it. The display format in the timeline is also customizable. So you could see that every parameter that determines the look and feel of this chart is configurable. And another thing with the roadmap is people would like to show some key milestones. So in this case, I'm saying I have a project date, start date and end date on which I'm defining this roadmap. I would like to say what are the key releases, for example. So let's say phase 1 release was expected to happen sometime in mid to 2019. I'm just saying, let's say in June 2019, there was supposed to be a key milestone. I'm setting a color for that milestone. And you will see that all these are going to be reflected in the final visualization. And these milestones are like, markers in this roadmap. I'm setting a custom size. I mean, this is going to be an iterative process. So first time I'm just choosing some size that fits in the current designer, but then I'll go back, look at how it kind of it's kind of coming up in the final dashboard, and then we could customize it or configure it again. So I'm going to look at how it's come up now. So I've got a bubble chart and a roadmap. I'm just going to click on the dashboard to see a preview of how it's showing up here. And it was intentional. I chose a light color to show that it didn't really come up very well because the background is kind of blurred. But I can see there are groups and there are these visualizations, these projects that are shown with their start date and end date, and the timeline is also shown here. So as a next step, I'm going to go back and edit this to make it look more appealing and more like articulative. So I'm going back to my dashboard and editing it. What I could also do is to go and edit that particular chart. So if I edit that chart at any point of time after my definition, Prolaborate will still fetch all the details, all the specific attributes that you chose previously, and will also let you choose something else. So what I'm going to do is, the roadmaps have all been in same color. I'm going to highlight them based on the status of the projects. So I've said I want to color code the bars based on the status. And then what I'm also doing is I'm going to change the background color. The background color was very too light and it wasn't very clear, so I'm going to change it. And I'm also going to remove the group legends. I mean, I could optionally remove the group legends, and I'm changing the color to something more legible, so it's kind of easy for users to understand. And as you could see, on every change I could do a preview to see how the final roadmap will look. So once I've done these changes, I'm just going to save them, and this will update the chart. So it was like intentionally done with a very basic setting, and then to modify that to make it look better. And this is the usual iterative process that we go through to design any dashboard. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, my bubble chart was looking too big compared to my roadmap, where my roadmap has more details in it. So I'm just resizing my widgets to make sure it looks it is clear. And once I save it and look at the final dashboard, so I'm just going back to my home. So as I click home, it will load my default dashboard, and then I have an option to switch to various other dashboards that I have. And this is showing me the bubble chart and the roadmap side by side. And as you could see, there are the status based coloring shown as well. So yet to start, in progress, deferred, or pending budget approvals. And it's not just visualization. Just clicking on one of these would even enable, disable these charts, or highlight or fade the ones that are irrelevant, or clicking on an item will take you to the page with its details as well. So all these are interactive visualizations, not just pictures. So if I want to see all the deferred projects or proposed ones, just by hovering over one of these, it will tell me which are the projects that are in the particular status, for example.
So just before we move on, you're talking about the iterative process of design. Now, it's true that you might create a roadmap and present it to a stakeholder, such as a CEO or a project owner, and they might provide feedback on the look and feel of the reports. So what are some of the advantages of this approach of being able to make changes quickly and being able to show it to stakeholders and decision makers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The bottom line of Prolaborate, the bottom line idea was to foster collaboration. So conventionally, when we have done projects for clients, we have modeled it, and then we have published it in a Word document and emailed it out to them, and they will tell us some feedback in an email response, and we need to go back to EA repository, modify that, and the cycle continues. It's too cumbersome in my opinion, and it's not the way most of these agile and fast-paced teams work. Prolaborate was introduced primarily to foster collaboration. So it's a full-fledged collaboration tool where any one of the stakeholders to whom we are showing these diagrams or visualizations can discuss. So they can log their feedback quickly on a dashboard or on a EA diagram, or even they could say the project start date and end date doesn't really make sense to me. So they could even have a comment on a specific item, and that will be sent as an email notification to the architect and to the rest of the people who are looking at this dashboard. And the architect could go back to their EA model and make the suggested change, or they could make a change to the particular visualization in the Prolaborate dashboard. And the good thing here is the moment the change is made in the EA repository, all the charts gets updated. So it's a live view of the underlying data, and the collaboration on the same platform using the same model information makes this repetitive process completely irrelevant. So it's live and it's everyone on the same page, and it's very transparent. So that's where Prolaborate's real strengths come into picture.
Thanks, Nizam. And I think some of the really important things there is that you're getting feedback from stakeholders. The data's live, so you're not producing a report that's static, that's out of date. It's always up to date with the most current information that's in the repository. You have a lot of flexibility and power about how those visualizations work, and it allows you to provide your stakeholders and decision makers with rich, detailed information that's coming from the live repository and giving you the most up-to-date information. There's another couple of questions just about the product suite. So I just want to very quickly mention that Enterprise Architect is our modeling tool where we develop and build the repository which contains all of the information. We then have the Pro Cloud Server, which allows you to then make this information available to anyone, anywhere around the world using our Pro Cloud Server tool suite, which allows people to view the information in the palm of their hands on a mobile device or a cell phone or a mobile phone or a tablet, or just using a URL. And then we have Prolaborate, so Sparx Systems Prolaborate, which then allows you to provide those visualizations. So what I'll do now is I'll hand back and we'll look at the last section, which is the landscape diagrams and multi-level charts. So thanks, Nizam.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. So we're going to look at the landscape diagrams or the multi-level charts. These charts are the most effective because this is intended to really simplify the multi-level hierarchical information that we have in our models and present them in a very simple way that anyone could comprehend. So I'm going to look at the EA repository here where I've got the L0, L1, and L2 capabilities, which is very typical for anyone doing a capability modeling. And as you could see, these are connected to each other. So I'm just going to create a sample by dragging and dropping a L1 capability. And then its traceability shows me that it has 4 L2 capabilities, and I'm using the insert related elements of EA to just visualize it here. And I'm just using the I'm doing an EA model here to make sure every one of us understand what's in EA. So I'm just using the layout tools of EA to make it look good. So I've got L1 capability and the L2 capability. So I'm just taking time to make it look good in EA as well. And as modelers, we all know that this is also important. We need EA diagrams to represent this. And then I'm going to go from the L2 capability to the applications that are connected to it. So I could see that there are a couple of applications that are connected to the L2 capability. Again, using the layout tools to make it look good. As you could see, this modeling, the diagramming is still done in EA, and there is no second thought about it. So for the questions on where these tools fit together, EA is the modeling environment to create the diagrams, and for the people who want to go to the nitty-gritties and do the wiring and the diagrams. And Prolaborate is the tool to make this information visual, like reach the wider stakeholders through simpler visualizations and curated dashboards. ProCloud Server is the integration layer in between. It's the API that exposes the EA model to the tools like Prolaborate. So these three tools are like almost like one. So you don't have to really be concerned about the nuances of it. These three tools together will give you an option to model and share. So I'm coming back to my dashboard, and then I'm going to just make some adjustments based on what I saw, and then adding a new widget. And this time again, it's an EA chart, but I'm going to choose the landscape diagram here, which is the multi-level chart that we are going to use to have a visual representation of the L1, L2 capability and the application. So I'm starting from my capabilities package. I'm choosing L1 capabilities. Sorry for the interruption. So yeah, I'm choosing L1 capabilities. And the moment I choose that, as you know, it shows me all the stereotypes that are available in that package. And then I'm choosing capability, Archimate capability, which is what I've used to model my L1 capabilities. But in this case, I'm going to go a bit deeper and say, I don't want all my L1 capabilities. Rather, I just want to filter them or narrow them down just to one or two of them. So I'm saying I want the strategic business management and the marketing and sales capability, and I want my visualization just around that. So I'm saying I want to narrow down this chart to only strategic business management and marketing and sales capability. So when you need to be aware of the underlying model information to define this chart, but as you could see, you don't have to be really technical. You don't have to do any querying or anything like that. I'm just re-emphasizing this again to show you how Prolaborate just intuitively goes and fetches the model information the moment you make a selection. So what you need to understand here is I've got an aggregation connector between the capabilities, and I want all the incoming connectors to my L1 capability. And the moment I say that, it says there's an aggregation or an association connector that's possible. And I am saying aggregation connector is what I want. And then it will let me say on the other end, you have a capability. And there could be multiple items. This is just allowing you to choose or filter what you want in the other end. So I'm saying I want Archimate capability in my other end, and I want to display the name of the Archimate capability on the other end, from the other end as well. So I'm going from L1 capability to L2 capability based on my model and the connector. And then now I want to understand the connection between my L2 capability and the application. And once I know what's in EA, I can make my selections fairly easily here. So I'm saying I want an association connector that's going out of my L2 capability. And as you can see, all these are very small or like fine lists specific to your selection. This is not showing you the whole list of tag values or the whole list of connectors. It's showing you what's relevant in this particular context. And I'm saying I want applications name to be displayed in the third level. So I've got level 1, L1 capability, L2 capability, and the application. So I've defined 3 layers of information to be shown in my landscape diagram. And I can then go and define the look and feel of my landscape. So you have text color, fill color, and the border color. That's pretty much everything that you need to customize how the particular landscape will look and feel like to the end users. And I could do a preview as well after doing the configurations. And this is my landscape widget added to my dashboard. And as I would expect, it's going to be quite large, so I'm giving it ample space to make sure it's clear, and it's it's not requiring too many pages of scroll to identify. And this is a very good instance or an example where narrowing down your final results really helps. If I haven't applied those 2 L1 capabilities as a starting point, this chart could become really, really big. And that's not a really good outcome. Like, we need something that's focused and targeted. So that's what Prolaborate's designer will let you do. So you could narrow down your selection criteria. And then looking at the final outcome, so I'm going to again switch to the dashboard, to the new dashboard that I've defined, which is the enterprise architecture views. And as you know, there was a bubble chart that was expected there, a roadmap that was expected, and the landscape that we just defined. And as you could see, marketing and sales has 3 L2 capabilities: marketing management, return management, sales management, and campaign management. And each of those are served by these applications. And this is completely auto-generated. So we don't have to do the layout. We don't have to maintain it every time the model changes. Modelers here, architects in this call, could kind of relate to the time and efforts we have to spend to create one of these manually. Like, I have done several views like this for various business queries, and it's really time consuming and it's hard to maintain. So to kind of eliminate the need to do any manual maintenance, we did this auto generating landscape diagrams. As a next step, as an advanced step, what I'm going to show here is this multi-level hierarchical charts. There are 3 of them supported in Prolaborate: the landscape, the most commonly used one, or the nested pie, and the tree map or the heat map, where it's a curated view and lets the user drill down. So what I'm going to do here is, sorry, this is just I'm just modifying the current thing to enable or disable the legends as well, or even make some changes to the look and feel. So based on what I see as a outcome in the first step, I can come back and edit. So I'm saying maybe the applications were just too plain. Maybe I give it a color to make it look prominent. So I'm just changing the look and feel, and also enabling legends. The previous time the chart wasn't showing a legend. All I need to do is go back and enable legend, so the end user will know what is shown in that landscape diagram. So you and I know that we are doing the L1, L2, and application, but for an end user to know, you just have to enable legend. And I'm also setting this dashboard as my default so that I don't have to be switching dashboards every time. So my final output here is my landscape diagram with a prominent, or like whatever look and feel that I like, with the legends shown as well. So my that's pretty much my dashboard defined. So as a last step, I mean, this is what I was mentioning. I'm going to just show you how you could use the same configuration and change this to some other charts as well. So you don't have to really redefine a chart once again. If I want to use this multi-level hierarchical information to display it as like a tree map or a heat map, I could just go and say edit that particular widget and change the type from a landscape to a nested pie or a heat map. All these 3 are multi-level charts, and from what I could see, most of our current users and consultants were using Prolaborate for visualization are really excited about these three charts, primarily because it kind of reduces the complexity of the model so much so that it doesn't look like there are so many connectors and tag values behind. It's just very intuitive and click through. So we've been hearing some really positive feedback about these charts in particular. So I'm just changing the chart type to heat map or tree map, however it's usually called. And then I'm just saving the setting. And in a moment, when we look at the final chart as a result, so I'm just changing the size of it to go back to the dashboard. So I'm just saving the final changes. And when I look at my dashboard now, you'll see that the same configuration that we did for a landscape diagram is now used for a tree map. And this will let the users drill down and understand the information. Instead of having a page in which everything is shown, you could have a drill down as well. It depends on whom you're catering to. So it's just in summary, what we saw was the bubble chart, the roadmap, and the multi-level charts using landscape diagrams. And as you could see, it's all leveraging the model information that we have in EA and articulating that in a way that's easily comprehensible by the wider stakeholders.
Thanks very much, Nizam. Now, if people have more questions or would like to arrange a demonstration of Prolaborate, you can email prolaborate@sparxsystems.com, and I'm sure Nizam and his team would be more than happy to show you more about Prolaborate and to drill down into that in a little bit much more detail. What I really like about this presentation is that you take the rich data that's stored in Enterprise Architect, and in a very few short steps, you can create detailed visualizations that allow decision makers and CEOs to be able to understand the data that's stored in the Enterprise Architect repository and visualize that information in a meaningful way that can help them make decisions about the L1 and L2 capabilities, to make decisions about costs. And I love the way that you're able to just set the cost for the bubble chart so you can see which items are really going to impact the organization. So it's a really rich and detailed information, which is fantastic. So just to sum up, so this webinar series will be posted on the Sparx Systems YouTube channel, so allowing you to hear from Sparx Systems experts from around the globe on a variety of different topics. So in the past, we've heard about TM Forum and tools for enterprise architecture. We've looked at Sparx Systems Prolaborate and architecture in the digital age. So there's a number of different resources that are available. If you want to get some assistance with that, we would encourage you to have a look at the Sparx Services website, which you should see on screen now. And on the sparxsystems.com/partners Sparx Services, you can find people in your local area that can help you to set up Enterprise Architect repository, to set up Sparx Systems Prolaborate, to set up Sparx Systems Pro Cloud Server. They can talk to you about the different licensing models, talk to you about cost, and help get you up and running. So there's a couple of questions like, can you use Prolaborate and Enterprise Architect together? So yes, so you can model everything in Enterprise Architect, and you can use Prolaborate to access some of that information. There's a couple of questions about saying, can we see how SQL can be used apart from just the simple visualizations? So although it's not in this presentation, Nizam, do you have some web resources that show how you can use SQL to create more complex visualizations?
Yep. Thanks. When I was expecting that query, yes, how much ever these designers could cater to, there will be special cases where we need to write the SQL. So for such advanced users, what we have is as you might have seen, you would have seen there was an option to write SQL queries as well. So you could start from scratch and write your SQL queries, or alternatively, as a result of this whole definition, the designer generates a SQL query, and there are steps in our help that will show you how to fetch that SQL query. So it's written in a log file. The query that is produced as a result of all your configurations will be written in a log file, and an advanced user, you could take that query and tweak it or modify that to your particular needs. You could either start from scratch or you could take one of them and modify, but we have also put up several resources in our help pages. I mean, if you need, you could please drop me an email. I can show you, or we can send you those links to give you examples of how to write SQL queries for this as well.
Thank you very much. Now, there's a couple of questions about, do you need anything between Prolaborate and Enterprise Architect? So obviously you need the Pro Cloud Server, and there's a few questions just about pricing. Now, what's really good is that if you go to sparxsystems.com, you can see that you've got information here about all of the products, and there's an overview of Prolaborate. And from the Prolaborate page, there's an ability to look at pricing. So Nizam, if you could perhaps talk about that.
So there are two options. So you could look at the pricing here, or this also gives you overall understanding of the Prolaborate pricing. But if you would like to understand in a bit more detail, you could go to Prolaborate Home, which is the dedicated page for Prolaborate. And if I look at the pricing option here, so you could see a pricing page, and that will give you all the deployment options. So we have a complete cloud hosted model as well. So you have the SaaS offering, or you could have a partial cloud implementation. So there are several ways you could avail this whole solution. And the Prolaborate page, the pricing will let you even play with the numbers to get an indicative idea of what your exact pricing is. So this pricing page will give you the details of on-premise versions and the cloud versions, and details about each of them as well. So there's more details here for you.
So I suppose one of the great things about that is that there's a great level of transparency. You can type in the number of people in your team, the number of modelers that you have, and you can very quickly get an understanding of that cost on a per annum basis, so that you know how much it's going to cost. And all of that hard work's done for you, and there's lots of information on our website about that. So what I'd like to do now is just wrap up this session. I'd like to thank everybody for their questions. I think there's lots of demand there for being able to use Prolaborate for some of those visualization tools. I know it's very impressive to see how quickly and easy it is to be able to create heat maps, to create landscape diagrams, to create bubble charts, and to be able to use the designer in order to do that. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today. Thanks very much, Nizam, for doing an excellent presentation and showing us how to get up and running with Prolaborate visualizations. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks everyone for joining. Look forward to hear any questions or feedback from you. I do really appreciate it. Thanks.
And once again, look forward to seeing you in future webinars. Thanks very much, and we'll look forward to chatting to you shortly. And that's it from us here at Sparx Systems, and thank you once again.